Okay, so we'll do a quick recap of what we just a minute or 2 minutes we will spend on recollecting what we have learned about hypothesis testing in the last session, and we will after that we will take a little bit we'll go a little further into the same. So to start with, so we have understood last time what a null hypothesis is and what an alternate hypothesis are. So, and we also understood based on what we want to prove, how do we construct a null hypothesis. So in general, we basically negate the whatever the statement that we want to prove, and we call it as a null hypothesis. So, and alternate hypothesis is anything that is not your null hypothesis is alternate hypothesis. So and we've also seen some other terms like one-tailed hypothesis and two-tailed hypothesis. This is based on the for a given null hypothesis, we will see if our alternate hypothesis has multiple directions in which it can progress. So for example, in this example here, our null hypothesis is saying that mean is greater than 100. That means my alternate hypothesis can only take values less than 100 in one single direction. So it's a left-tailed test, so one-tailed test. And likewise, you can have similar example for the right-tailed test. And these are the two examples of one-tailed test, one-tailed hypothesis. And the other variant of the same is like the two-tailed hypothesis, where our alternate hypothesis has both directions in which it can progress, both greater than or equal to. So if in here, as the example says, my mean is null hypothesis saying that my mean is equal to 100. So that means I can go higher or lower than that to reject my null hypothesis. So my alternate hypothesis go in both directions. So in that case, this type of tests are called two-tailed tests. And later we also saw some two types of errors that are possible in a general hypothesis testing, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 error is basically when we reject the null hypothesis when it is actually true. So that is we are instead of accepting it, we are rejecting it. That is the type 1 error. A type 2 error is basically you accept the hypothesis even though it's false. So that is your type 2 error. And type 1 error is we have also seen how the importance of these two types of errors vary from situation to situation. So some of the errors will be slightly more important, and we may want to eradicate that a little more and be critical on that type of error relatively when compared to the other type. So and we will, for the next topics that which we are about to discuss, we will mostly be involving type 1 error. So type 1 error is also involved in what is called a significance level. So the probability of type 1 error happening in your test, hypothesis test, is normally termed as significance level, which using which we will talk about it in detail later. But this term is very important. This is using this term only we will know how, if we have to reject the null hypothesis or we have to accept the alternate hypothesis. So, and we call that alpha, the significance level. And obviously, as the similar explanation for type 2 error, we have something called beta. So it's we'll come to it at the right time, but not maybe in today's session. So this is about the errors, and we have also seen a term called critical region. So critical region is basically under a sampling distribution. Okay, under a sampling distribution, what are the values which you can, even though if your sample statistic falls in that region, you can ignore it. So for example, if you take this right-tailed test, okay, and your null hypothesis is saying that my mean is less than let's say some value, and that value is sitting right over here. Let's assume at my cursor. In that case, all that is greater than that will be your null hypothesis. That means if your sample value lies above that, you will reject the null hypothesis. So that is well and good, but if your sample value lies at the extreme value and where the alpha is there, the shaded region, even though it is supporting your alternate hypothesis and it's against your null hypothesis, we do not reject the null hypothesis there, because the chances of that particular value coming up again and again is very less. So the y value, if you see in the probability distribution, is very less for these values. What does it mean is basically, hey, though you got this extreme value, the chance of this getting is very less. You will not get that very often. Very rarely you will get that, so don't take that into consideration. So that's why we reject those values. And in each of these one-tailed and two-tailed test, those shaded regions that you see under alpha is basically those critical regions, and they are typically borderlined by whatever the value beyond which the critical region starts is called the critical values. And these values define basically whether we have to reject or not reject the null hypothesis. If it is in between those critical values, we do not reject the null hypothesis. If it is outside those critical values, then we will go ahead and reject the null hypothesis. So okay, so this is the term about critical region and critical values. And let's continue a little further. And there is something called level of confidence, or this is something that which we've already covered, almost similar to confidence interval. Here we are just saying that whatever the test that you do on null hypothesis, right? For example, your null hypothesis, you state that my mean is less than 100. Okay, that means you should be confident, hey, okay, your mean is less than 100, but how many times, what is the confidence that you're with what confidence are you telling that? How let's say, just for a general example, if I take 100 samples, what is the percentage of the times that I will this null hypothesis will be true? So that is the confidence level which we talk about. And typically in significance hypothesis testings, the confidence level of 95% is what is achieved, what is requested at the minimum, 95%, unless very specific cases where it could be it depends upon the situation, but generally if there is we tend to keep it at 95% at minimum. It can go higher, as you can achieve for level of confidence which is 99%, or if it is even more severe and you have to be more serious, you can go for 99.99%, something like that. So that is your level of confidence, 95%, and the negation of that, so whatever the 100% minus your 95% will be your 5%, will be the level of significance alpha. So it is basically, as we discussed, it's the probability of that type 1 error happening, so where we reject the null hypothesis when we are not supposed to. So that is the so both these alpha and your level of confidence will be always match up to 100%. So that is your level of confidence. And let's say, for example, typically this is what it will look like. So any general result of a hypothesis testing, let's say you have a null hypothesis H0, let's say if it is not rejected at a significance level alpha of 5%, that means we say that, hey, I am pretty sure that my null hypothesis is true with a confidence of 95%. So this is how these level of confidence and level of significance will work together in what they mean from the output of a hypothesis testing. Now let's talk about another interesting term called p-value. Okay. Okay, so before going there, to understand the p-value, what does it mean and etc., we will take a simple example and try to understand. Okay, so for example, let's suppose we are conducting a hypothesis testing with the significance level of 1%. Our alpha is 1. Okay, we'll assume that this alpha that is shaded region here is 1. That means 1 minus alpha is 99% confidence is what you require in your hypothesis testing. And your null hypothesis is something like this. Your mean is less than some value x, let it be variable for the time being. Okay, and let's assume we are also looking at a one tail test, and particularly a right tail test. Now if you're now given this is the proper setup for your hypothesis testing. This is the question for your hypothesis testing. Hey, this is my null hypothesis and I want a level of significance of this much. Can you just check if my if we have to reject the null hypothesis, if it is true, or if we fail to reject the null hypothesis. And what we do from here is that we will, based on the sample data that which we have, we will calculate the some value. So for example, think of this sampling distribution. Okay, and given this 1% of the alpha, so we have 1% alpha that is specified. So we will come to know the critical value. What is this critical value beyond which, if my sample statistics goes, I will reject the null hypothesis, rejection region. So consider this line as my critical region. Now for my sample that which I have, I will calculate my statistic. Okay, and I will see if that is falling after this critical value or less than this critical value. If it is falling by less than critical, obviously we accept the alternate hypothesis. We do not reject the null hypothesis, and we accept the alternate hypothesis. I'm sorry, we do not reject the null hypothesis, fail to reject the null hypothesis. And if it goes beyond my critical value of then we reject the null hypothesis. Now take a specific case where for the let me actually use my pointer. Yeah, just okay. So given my alpha is 1 at the moment, so this whole region is representing for my significance level of 1, right? If a value lies here, okay, my, let's say my sample statistic value is falling here, okay, and on this particular x-axis, this has crossed my critical value. So what I'll do is obviously I can reject my null hypothesis. Now think of a situation where your what happens if your level of significance jumps to 2% from my current 1%. So as of now my alpha is 1%. What if it jumps from 1% to 2%? My critical value, my critical region will shift towards the left, right? It will shift towards the left, and I'll get an updated critical value for alpha is equal to 2%. So but even if it is still when alpha is equal to 2%, my sample statistic will always be in the rejection region. So no matter as long, so if my sample, if my null hypothesis is rejected at alpha is equal to 1%, it will stay rejected for any alpha that is greater than 1%, 2%, 3%, 5%, what any alpha that is greater than 1%. So that is for sure, we can tell that from the visual, right? So now let's say, for example, if you have to go in the other direction, instead of increasing the alpha, if you have to decrease the alpha less than 1%, okay, what happens to my critical region? My critical region, let me clear this out. Yeah, so okay, now sorry, get this again. Yeah, if my alpha, let's say now this is for 1%, okay, and if I reduce my alpha to, let's say, 0.9, right, now what happens? My region instead of there till here, it will only stay till here, right? Now let's say if your value sample statistic value lies here, okay, what happens? So it is rejected at alpha is equal to 1, but it will stay unrejected at alpha is equal to 0.9. It's simple, right? Simple to understand, because my threshold to for rejection has reduced, so obviously, and this particular sample statistic is escaping my 0.9 threshold, but it is not escaping 1% threshold. Now how can we tell that? So given as a particular sample statistic, for example, if a sample statistic is failing at 1%, I cannot tell easily that if it is failing at a 0.9 or 0.8 unless I see where it is falling, right? This particular position, if I don't know this position, I cannot tell. So because of that, that is where this p-value comes into picture. And what p-value is defined is actually okay, this is the definition of the p-value. What it says is, so the smallest level of significance at which a null hypothesis can be rejected. So here at 1% I'm rejecting my null hypothesis, okay, but at the 0.9% I'm not rejecting my null hypothesis, right? So that means, assuming that there is no intermediate values 0.9 and to 1, that means my p-value here will become 1%. So hope the definition for p-value is clear. So what it's basically telling here is, hey, I know that there are lots of significance values where you can reject your null hypothesis, but at what is the smallest level of significance where my p-value, I can reject the null hypothesis. Why do we want to know p-value? Because of the logic that we just discussed. If I know p-value as some x, okay, I can definitely know that for any value that is any sigma alpha value greater than p-value, I can, my null hypothesis is always rejected, okay, because of the same logic that we. But so, and anything that is less than p-value, for example, my alpha value is the null hypothesis is not rejected. The reason, p is the smallest value where you can reject it, beyond which you cannot reject the null hypothesis, something like that, okay. So in order to understand that, basically that is the definition of the p-value. Hope we are clear on that particular part. If there are any questions, you can stop me here. Okay, let's move on to the next then. So now, given that is the state, now let's see how do we so that is just the understanding of p-value, the concept, intuitive understanding behind the p-value, the smallest level of significance at which a null hypothesis can be rejected. Let me clear this out, and let's see how do we actually calculate the p-value. It's a pretty simple how do we calculate the p-value given these are the situations, okay? All we have to do is, p-value is nothing but the probability, okay? What is the area? So obviously this is the probability distribution, each of these curves. So anything, the area between that is considered as probability. So what we do is consider this right-tailed example, okay? The p-value for the right-tailed example is nothing but the probability of the test statistic greater than the observed value of the test statistic. That means you have a sample, you got a mean for your sample, and you will see where that particular sample is lying here on this x-axis, and it may not definitely match with the critical value which is given by your alpha. So you will find where that value is, either here or here. Let's assume that this particular arrow here is the sample statistic value, and you will see everything that is you will calculate the probability of all the values that are greater than that particular value. So that means all the region that is right side to this particular region value. So that area, that particular shaded region will be your p-value. So, and likewise for two-tail test, left tail test, it's a similar example. You just have to take a value that is less than that particular value. On the two-tail test, we have to, since it's a symmetric area, so what will symmetric curve, what will happen is it will be we have to calculate the p-value on both the sides. So we just take the value on one side and multiply it with 2 to get the p-value on the both sides. So this is how we calculate, but we don't have to worry these days about calculation of this p-value, etc. These things are automatically given by all the statistical softwares that which or tools with which we use. Even I think Excel is also capable of doing that. So this is about the how to calculate p-value. And now let's assume once you have the p-value, how do we make a decision of rejecting the null hypothesis and accepting the null hypothesis? Don't be overwhelmed with the diagram on the right. We will come to that. It's everything that we just discussed so far. Let's assume you have a p-value. Okay, now focus on this particular region over here on the right side. The yellow region, right from the rightmost corner to the yellow shaded region, is basically your significance level, and this particular point is your critical value. Okay, so we know what critical value is, and that is the rejection region. Now you will calculate your p-value, and as I said, so basically that means this okay, so this particular shaded region in green is what your p-value is telling us. What does it mean? That hey, at the moment my p-value for my sample based on my sample is falling in my rejection region. That means my p-value is less than my alpha. What is alpha? Alpha is the area of the yellow region, yellow and green, whereas my p-value is only of the area of the green region. That means my p-value will always be less than my alpha. And whenever my p-value is less than my alpha, that means I am in the rejection zone. So if my p-value exceeds my alpha, my green becomes greater than my yellow region. That means I have crossed the critical value and I'm in the acceptance region. So I will not reject the null hypothesis in that case. So based on that logic, we will decide how to decide the null hypothesis, if you have to reject it or accept it. If my p-value is greater than alpha, if my green crosses the critical value, we do not reject the null hypothesis. If my p-value is smaller than the alpha, which is less than the critical value, we reject the null hypothesis. Here we just showed it for right-tailed example, but the similar example you can construct for the left-tailed example or the two-tailed example. Now, okay, let me one other point. Okay, so this is how we invent the this is how we make decision based on the p-value. Okay, we have seen how do we what is a p-value. Okay, how do we calculate p-value for different types of tests, and we have seen from the p-value how do we make a guess. If it is less than your significant, just go ahead and reject the null hypothesis. Now, given that is the case, let's see why do we need p-value? Okay, in order to make a decision about if we have to reject the null hypothesis or we have to not reject the null hypothesis. So let's take this particular example. So this is something that which we are all familiar with. Okay, and the curves that we see here, all of them represent the similar curve. Okay, here we call this something called a standard normal distribution. So basically what it means is the standard normal distribution. You can convert any normal distribution in your standard normal distribution. We'll come to that at the moment, right time. So it's just that for a standard normal distribution, you can expect that your mean will always be 0. Okay, and your standard deviation will be 1. So those are the properties of your standard normal distribution. And think of a situation, this is your sampling distribution, and your alpha is 0.5. Okay, That means here this particular 0.5 that is representing, so all the region right side to this particular my cursor point will be your alpha. So if your sample statistics falls in this, so that becomes this critical region. In this critical region, we reject the null hypothesis. What you could do is basically, so do you see this values z-score here? So these are basically the values that which we use to compare if my sample statistic is falling either in the critical region or outside the critical region. So what we basically do is we calculate the mean of our sample, and for the mean that which we got, we will calculate the z-score. Okay, and we will see, so for this 0.5 level significance, my z-score is something around, like, let's assume approximate to be 2.7, right? So 2.5 here and 3 here, so it could be some 2.7. So if my z-score for my sample is greater than 2.7, then I'm pretty sure that, hey, my sample is falling in this very rare critical region rejection zone, so I will reject my null hypothesis. I will not consider that as a evidence. So my sample is not, whatever my sample is telling is not significant. That's what we conclude. So but in order, so just from the sample statistic value, we can get that conclusion. We can get to that conclusion, either we have to reject it or not reject it. But why do, if you see, we haven't talked about p-value here, right? So far we have not introduced, without p-value only we got to this rejection or not rejection. But what happens, this is why p-value is important, because if you have to test for a significance level again and again, okay, we have a constant significance of 0.5. Let's say if your significance level changed, instead of 0.5 changed to 0.1, okay, then what you have to do, you have to calculate your basically again, you have to get the z value for your 0.1 significance and see, compare your sample z value for your sample statistic, and then get that value again and again. So for every new value of significance, you have to do that comparison, and you have to then make a decision. So but when p-value comes into picture, you don't have to do that for all of it. So all you have to do is, you get the p-value. If your p-value, you just do it one time. So if your p-value is less than your significance level, based on that, you always reject it, or if it's not, you fail to reject it. It's a slightly confusing concept, but if any one of you finds any difficulty, you can let me know. Any questions at the moment? I just want to quickly check before closing. We will, in the next sessions, we will see, so we haven't fully dealt with hypothesis testing yet. We just understood the overview of what happens in hypothesis testing. In next sessions, possibly we will cover how do we actually calculate these z-scores. There is something else called t-score, okay, based on which is also used similarly. Okay, we will try to see cover those z-test and t-test, and we'll see how to calculate the z-score. We will take a practical example of comparing this z-score with the sample data which we have, and do a practical case of hypothesis testing. So all that, but from the conceptual standpoint, if you have any questions in understanding either of the concepts we discussed today, you can go ahead and ask your questions. Okay.